Dick Gregory was a man of many attributes. In his lifespan, he was an athlete, Army vet, political activist, candidate for president, mayor, comedian, health guru, and most importantly, a father figure to the future generation. Dick Gregory would be best known as a high-quality comic and a political activist during the 1960s. He would be the first African-American comedian to do stand-up and successfully cross over to a white audience. He was known for his edgy, ironic satire style of comedy that was often around the topic of race. Dick Gregory would be born on October 12, 1932 in St. Louis, Missouri. He was one of 6 siblings that grew up with his father Presley Gregory and mother Lucille Gregory. Mr. Gregory would attend the University of Southern Illinois, where he would set 2 school records for the half mile and the miler. 2 years later, Dick Gregory would be drafted for the Vietnam War in 1954 and would be discharged in 1956. While serving in the Army, Mr. Gregory would often receive letters from kids in grade school and kindergarten, asking them when the war in Vietnam would end. Mr. Gregory would often ask himself those same questions, but in his heart, he knew what he was doing was wrong. In 1956, when Dick Gregory's military service ended, he would return to Southern Illinois University, but would eventually drop out without attaining a degree. After dropping out of school, Dick Gregory would leave St. Louis and travel to Chicago, the Windy City. He would pursue his dreams of becoming a comic and would perform at small comedy clubs until he would eventually save money to open up his own club called the Apex Club in 1958. The club would only remain open for 1 year due to financial issues. Soon after, Dick Gregory would move to the Big Apple in New York City, where he would finally get his big break being discovered by Hugh Hefner, the founder and editor-in-chief of Playboy magazine. Hugh Hefner loved Mr. Gregory's style of comedy, which was an edgy satire mixed in with a little race and dark humor. But this style of comedy was like a double-edged sword. While there were people who loved this brash, unforgiving style, there were others who hated it, particularly white men who labeled Mr. Gregory as an extreme racist. But this wouldn't stop Mr. Gregory from performing for white audiences. Comedy was important to Mr. Gregory. Growing up in St. Louis, there was no such thing as comedy. Mr. Gregory was born and raised before the television was invented. At the time, the only means of getting news was the radio, so Mr. Gregory didn't truly learn about comedy until he was much older. Mr. Gregory knew there was a difference between being funny and being a professional comedian who gets paid to tell jokes. In order to execute a comedic joke, your timing has to be right. But if you are around the table with family and friends, then the timing doesn't matter as much, but you can still be funny. Mr. Gregory realized he could control the crowd with his humor. He felt like there was nothing he could do. But being born in an era where he would never be seen as equal or be able to eat or go to school at a location of his choice, Mr. Gregory knew he couldn't sit idly by and just make jokes. He knew that if he wanted change, he would have to be a social disruptor, someone who was willing to make the lives of his oppressor uncomfortable. Mr. Gregory was born into the Jim Crow era. The Jim Crow era began in 1877 and ended in 1964. It was created by a struggling actor called Dartmouth Rice, who would perform blackface as a character named Jim Crow. This act would become popular in the white community and later be used as a derogatory term or racial slur. It was during this time where Dick Gregory would begin to protest against any injustice. Mr. Gregory would organize sit-in protests against segregation, the Vietnam War, and women's rights. Dick Gregory would try to make change by running for mayor of Chicago against Richard Bailey. Even though he lost, this would not be Mr. Gregory's last bid for political office. In 1968, he would run for president as the write-in candidate for the Freedom and Peace Party. Mr. Gregory wouldn't win, but he would garner 47,097 votes. Mr. Gregory would soon catch the attention of the FBI and the Department of Justice. Traveling from state to state for his bid for president, Dick Gregory would travel to college campuses speaking out against racism, women's rights, and the Vietnam War. J. Edgar Hoover wanted Dick Gregory dead, and in his own words to another FBI agent, J. Edgar Hoover would ask for a sophisticated, completely untraceable means of neutralizing Mr. Gregory, and it should be top priority. The special agent, Marlon Johnson, replied, "Chicago is giving the matter of discrediting Gregory top priority." Mr. Gregory was very involved in the civil rights movement. On October 7, 1963, Dick Gregory would travel to Selma, Alabama with Martin Luther King, where he would speak at a rally about voter registration. Dick Gregory would attempt to lead 100 African American residents to attempt to register, but they would be denied by police and local officials. Mr. Gregory can remember many important moments in history, but to him there was one that stood out more than the rest, and that would be the death of Emmett Till, who would be snatched away in his home while he slept for false allegations for whistling to a white woman. Dick Gregory knew that this would be the first time America would be embarrassed publicly. On June 1st, 1964, 3 civil rights workers were kidnapped, shot, and killed by the Ku Klux Klan after they were released from the police station for allegedly speeding. The 3 civil rights workers remained missing for 44 days, and if it wasn't for people like Mr. Gregory, who would put public pressure on the FBI by putting up their own cash reward for any information that led to the 3 civil rights workers. And it worked. After Mr. Gregory put up his own cash reward, the FBI would as well, and have 1,000 agents looking for the missing boys. Mr. Gregory also spoke out against the evidence the Warren Commission presented on the assassination of John F. Kennedy. He would present a graphic forensic investigator to the lawyers of the Presidential Commission. On March 6, 1975, Mr. Gregory would appear on Late Night ABC, where he would present the video of John F. Kennedy. It was shown for the first time and met with public outrage, which led to the creation of the United States Committee on Assassination. Dick Gregory was a very complex man who was willing to put his life on the line, but also willing to show you how to extend yours by putting the right things in your body. Dick Gregory was a quote-unquote health guru. His journey started when a Mississippi sheriff kicked Mr. Gregory's wife while she was 9 months pregnant. The reason why he didn't retaliate with violence is because of his non-violent stance. And then he thought to himself, well, if he's going to be non-violent towards humans, then animals should get the same respect. And from then on, Dick Gregory vowed to no longer eat meat. He'd also go around the country talking about the benefits of exercising, eating well, and drinking plenty of water. Dick Gregory did all of this while fighting for African Americans, whites, the Vietnamese, women, and Indians. If there was a problem, you could count on Dick Gregory to show up and show out. Dick Gregory would go on to write multiple books and continue to fight against racism, violence, and hunger. He would continue to share his knowledge of his experience in life through interviews. Mr. Gregory would unfortunately pass away at the age of 84 in 2017.